Well, thank you very much for coming to GRE Test Prep Strategies. So I'm really happy you all are here. My name is James Powell, and I work in UCall in the Student Success Center at Hill Hall, and my office is 106. We actually have a whole series of workshops. This is one of them, but you can find them at wssu.edu/success workshops. So of course we do have the printouts down in the first floor, but if you also want to go online, you can find them all there and figure out where they're at and what they're called and what they're all about. All right, so without further ado, let's get into GRE Test Prep. Again, my name is James Powell. I've actually taught test prep in a class environment for many years here at WSSU. So I know the GRE actually pretty well, both from a teaching perspective and from a taker's perspective. I actually took the GRE several years ago, and I scored in above the 90th percentile in all the areas, verbal, math, and writing. And I've also taken the GMAT, which is the equivalent graduate test for business school applicants. It's the Graduate Management Admissions Test. And for that, I actually scored in the 99th percentile, so very, very, very high. So I understand the test both from a perspective of a test taker and from the perspective of teaching other people how to do better. So I say that not to say that I am just so amazing. It's not about me. I say that so that you can trust what I have to say. So you can trust the ideas that we're going to talk about today. All right? Comes from a very good source who knows what he's talking about. Without further ado, we're going to jump in. Let's talk, first of all, about what we're going to do today. We're going to play a little game. It's going to be a game show, just to make it fun. So for the game show, you're going to be the next contestant on Name That Picture. I'm going to send you a picture up on this screen, and you're going to tell me what you think it might mean in the context of the GRE. I know, Demarius, you've taken some of the GRE prep tests and all of that. Brianna, have you taken any prep stuff or anything like that? So this is your first exposure to GRE. All right, well, great. The first picture I'm going to show you is this. Has anyone bought furniture from IKEA before? Any IKEA lovers out there? Well, this is an example of IKEA instructions on how to build your IKEA furniture. What do you think I might be saying for this picture when it comes to GRE? I'm going to be looking to you, Demarius, for some of these answers. And again, you can take a guess, just a game. I'll give you the first one to get us started. The first one is, for the GRE, you really want to know the instructions down pat. And you can follow along with my Word doc that I've printed out for you. Know the instructions, okay? Why? Because time is of the essence. If there's nothing more you learn today, you should learn that the GRE is a time-based test. It's all about the time. Restriction on time, mostly. So they're going to really pull back on the amount of time you have to do stuff. That's what makes the test hard. Not necessarily the questions. Yes, they can be difficult. But the time pressure you're under really makes it hard. So the first thing is, know the instructions. There's going to be different sections of the GRE, and you have to understand how each of those sections work, because you can't be limited to thinking about math in a certain way. There's different types of math questions. So you have to know those instructions for each of the kinds of math, each of the kinds of verbal, so well that on test day, you don't need to read the instructions. That's going to be the key. So with familiarity, as you get comfortable with each section of the test, you will develop speed. You will get better at comparative mathematics, and you will get better at reading comprehension or sentence completion. All these different things require different knowledge and different approaches. First key is know the instructions for each section. You would also be able to condition yourself to respond quickly to those different kinds which we just talked about. Finally, you should absolutely never have to read the instructions on test day. That would be a waste of time. You don't want to have to go there. And believe me, that can be a valuable 2 or 3 minutes. Reading instructions on test day can cost you 5–10% of your total time on a given section. So you never want to have to do that. You should know the instructions so well that you never have to consult it. All right, the second part of our game will be this picture right here. What do y'all think this might mean for a test such as the GRE? Sorry? Don't rush. Yes, don't rush. Very good. So it is not a sprint, it is a marathon, like they like to say. So it's a very long test. It's a long haul. It's a long test. You need to be prepared for about 4 hours of your time. What it requires is that you build up your endurance. You're going to need to get used to taking a test for 4 hours. That's not something normal people do. That's not even something normal college students do. So they're asking something extraordinary of you. And you have to understand that when you take that test, is they are going to be requiring you to have an extraordinary and extra amount of endurance, right? It is not normal to do 4 hours of testing all at once. Now, maybe if you're a senior, maybe if you're a graduate student, that might be more normal. But for y'all as undergraduates, that's asking a lot. So understand that that's what they're requesting of you beforehand. And as you do your practice tests, you want to build up to that level. Maybe you take a 30-minute section, and then the next week you take 2 30-minute sections back to back. And the next week you take 3 30-minute sections back to back to back. You see what I'm getting at? So over the coming months, say you're taking the test in May and you have 4 months, you can build yourself up to being used to taking 3.5 hours of testing all at once. All right. The next bullet I have is find your happy place. And this is very important when you start to feel like you're in a little bit of trouble. And we all get to that point. We're taking a test, and the test is just really hard. And we're frustrated, we're worried, we don't want to do badly, but we feel like we're being asked to do something we don't feel comfortable doing, and you get into that spiral effect where you start to feel bad for yourself. You don't ever want that to happen to you in any test, but especially not a test as important as the GRE. So how do you avoid that? My advice is find a happy place. Has anybody seen the movie Dumb and Dumber? Anybody seen that movie with Jim Carrey? I love that movie. And there's one moment, it's the bathroom scene. There's one movement when something very bad is about to happen to him, and he's got to curl up in a ball, and he says, "Find a happy place. Find a happy place." And that's what you need to do. When you're scared, you're worried, you're anxious, when you're in a tough position, when you feel like the test is getting the better of you, go back to your happy place, whatever that might be. What might be a happy place? Like for me, I have an 8-month-old daughter. So I might think of my baby girl and go, oh wow, she's so sweet, I love that smile. Maybe that's my happy place. So my challenge is, what's your happy place? Where will you go to? Can you think of a happy place to go to when things are not going so well and you need to pick yourself back up? What do y'all think? What could be a happy place for you?
Back home, like with my mom.
Yeah.
That's like my happy place, like making her proud. So we can do that.
Yeah. And where is home for you? What city?
Knightdale, North Carolina.
What's the city?
Knightdale, North Carolina.
Knightdale?
Yeah, it's right besides where I live.
Okay, so you might think of home,
Yeah.
your mama, Knightdale, North Carolina, and think of all the things that are good about being home with mama, right? Perfect. So that would put a smile on your face. That would give you energy. That would give you encouragement. That's what you want. Demarius, what about you? What might be a happy place for you?
Probably about the same. Family.
About the same family?
Yeah.
Right. Family's valuable. Family's important. And that gives you a pick you up. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll probably say like school too. Like what is the actually like finish basically.
So knowing that you're going to finish school,
Yeah. Or like get to the next level, I guess.
and get to the next level.
Yeah.
So all of your kind of your goals, your ambitions about college, that's important to you, and that puts a smile on your face. Very good. So that would be finding a happy place. And again, that's a place that you can go to when you're feeling under stress, and you will feel under stress during this test. So you need to have a happy place. So that's that third bullet. Continuing with our quiz, and again, you can follow along and fill it in as we go. What do you think this picture might mean? Yes, I've already given you a couple of the words on that sheet. So yes, the rest of it is answer every question. Yes, answer every question. The reason is there is no penalty for wrong answers. Now, some of you who are maybe older, like seniors, junior seniors, you probably took an SAT back when you got the question wrong, you actually had a penalty of a quarter point, negative a quarter point. Some of you who are younger, maybe freshmen, you maybe took the SAT in the latest, newest version, in which there is no penalty. So depending on what year you're in, you may have lived in an era where the SAT actually deducted a quarter point from your wrong answers. But the GRE is not the case. GRE, no matter what you answer, you can't get a penalty. If you get it wrong, you just get 0 points. You don't get negative. So that means you must answer every question. If you fail to answer every question, you are failing to maximize your points, even if you're guessing, because you might get lucky and get a few right. So you never want to leave anything blank on your GRE answer sheet. Is that clear? The thing that goes along with this whole idea about answering every question is, that's fine if I answer a question, but how do I go about doing it when I really don't know what the answer is probably going to be? That comes into guessing. How do I guess well? Would be a good question to ask ourselves. What does it take to guess well? And I put a little hint here called POE. Does anyone know what POE stands for? Anyone? So POE is process of elimination. And it's what you do when you cross off wrong answer choices. So say you have answer choices A, B, C, D, and E. If you're able to cross off a couple of answer choices, your probability of getting that question right jumps up, increases dramatically. Like if you were just purely guessing out of those 5 answer choices, you have a 1 in 5 chance of getting it right, 20%, just randomly. But if you cross off 2 answer choices, you got a 1 in 3 chance. Does anybody know what 1 in 3 is? 1 out of 3? What percent is that? It's about 33%. And if you cross off 3 wrong answers, and you're left with only, for example, D and E, you actually have what percent? 1 out of 2. You have 50% chance of getting it right. So again, the key to guessing well is crossing off those wrong answer choices so that you have a chance, a higher probability chance of getting it right. You can grab one of those sheets and join us. That's what it means to guess well, to be able to cross off wrong answer choices. Now we have a very short 1 hour together. We're not going to get into how to do that, and every section is different. But as Demarius knows, if you do some one-on-one tutoring with me, or one-on-several group tutoring, you'll get some of those answers as to how do we do that in a specific type of question, in a specific segment of the GRE. The next bullet I have here talks about how long does it take to guess well. I asked this question because what did I say at the beginning? What's the most important thing to know? GRE is a time-based test. So it's not just a test of your knowledge, it is a test of your knowledge based upon very constricted, limited time. So you have to, when you guess, do it efficiently. So my answer to how long does it take to guess well is not long at all. You should not ponder. You should not wonder. You should not hesitate. You need to go for it when you guess. Go for it and move on. After you've done your process of elimination, which will take time and effort, at that point, when you're done and you've got C, D, and E and you're not sure which one it is, you must learn how to guess quickly and move on quickly. Do not wonder which one you should take, because at that point it's just a guessing game. You just need to move on. Finally, where within a section should you be guessing? You probably know this, but if you don't, the GRE is sectioned out. So each section is either verbal or math. And of course, there is a separate writing section. But for verbal and math, it is separated out. But within each section, there are many different kinds of verbal questions, or there are many different kinds of math questions. So where within that whole section of 20, 25 questions should I be guessing? The answer is wherever you're not sure of what the right answer is. It'll happen all over the place. Each section is not in order of easy to hard. So it's not like the section gets harder as you go. That's not true. So it's all going to be interspersed to the difficulty levels throughout a section. So the answer is it'll always come up kind of all over the place. Let's move on to our next quiz question. And again, what's your name?
Ambrosia.
Ambrosia? Great. You can follow along with us. We're just filling in the blanks as we go. The last one was answer every question. This one, what do you think this might mean when it relates to the GRE test? What would that mean? Use a timer? Yes, timer. Yes, timer. Use a timer is the right answer to that quiz question. And you should also use it in your practice, meaning when you're practicing at home, not just during the test. Obviously, you're under time constriction. When you're practicing, you should also be using a timer. Why is that important? What do you think? Any ideas why it's important to use a timer? Keep track of your time. Yeah, definitely. Keep track of how much time you're using. How else could it help you? Let's take a look. One way is it simulates test conditions. So by using a timer when you practice, you're imitating what it will feel like on the actual test day. The other thing is it does add real pressure. You start to feel, wow, okay, this is challenging. I feel the time pressure. When the time beeps, you go, whoa, it's beeping already. So you get a feel for how difficult the actual test can be. And that's good for you. You need to feel that pressure early. You don't want to feel that pressure only on game day or on the actual test day. You want to feel that pressure early and often so you get used to it and you can deal with it better. So the answer to that question, we're doing a little mini quiz, is use a timer, and we're going over why using a timer is good. The fourth bullet I have here is that it accurately estimates your score. If you don't use a timer when you're practicing, when you go back and try to calculate what your score would be, which is available on many books, you self-score what your score might look like, it's not going to be very accurate if you're not strictly using a timer, turning your phone off, closing and locking your door, being in a quiet environment where you're not interrupted all the time. You have to simulate test conditions in order to do well on the actual test. Any questions so far? Is this making sense to you all? The final thing I want to say about this is that there is a time to use a timer, which is most of the time, but there is also a time not to use a timer. And here's an example of when you may not want to use a timer. You might first go through a section in your practice book, which Demarius is showing us very nicely here. You might go through a practice section in this book, and you use the timer, and you maybe only got through, say, 15 of the 20 questions. You didn't even get to look at or touch 5 of those 20 questions. Well, why would you not use a timer? At that point, after you've already taken it with the timer, you still got to understand those 5 questions. So you want to set 2 brackets of time. The first is the timed amount to do that section, say 30 minutes. The second section is the amount of time it takes to review your wrong answers, but also try to do the questions you didn't even have time to look at. All right? So there's a 2-part. Every time you do a section, you got to think of it in 2 ways. So that's a time when to turn the timer off, and you just have all the time you need to just try to figure out the questions. See if you can get it right. That's true also when you review your answers, and if you got a wrong answer, why did I get it wrong? I go to the back of the book, look up how they answered it. Then you have a better understanding, or ask a tutor, or call myself, or ask your instructor. Find out, why did I get this wrong? Then you can correct. But obviously you don't want to be on a timer at that point. You just need to spend the time you need to spend. But most importantly, I'm talking about the questions you never got around to looking at because you took it under time pressure. All right? Is that clear? Everybody good? Any questions so far? Let's move on. Continuing with our quiz. Since we're getting close to the Super Bowl, we got a couple of players here. What do you think this might be saying about what we have to remember about the GRE? I'm sorry? Ambrosia got it. Trust your gut. That's right. I made sure to start from the middle so that it wouldn't be quite as hard. So Got to boom, hit it from the middle. So yes, trust your gut. If you got my little message there, you would have gotten this right. Go with your first answer. So important. That's a question I get a lot, even just for people who are trying to study better, who are trying to do better in school. When they come to me and they ask me those kinds of questions, I always say, go with your first answer. Don't second guess, go back, rethink, choose a different answer. Those things, generally speaking, are unhelpful. So don't second guess yourself. Part of it is also psychological, let's be honest. If I'm second guessing myself on a test, that's not a healthy thing. I don't want to second guess myself in life, in the choices I make, in what I eat for lunch. If you go around second guessing yourself, you live a very strange life. Would you not agree? You know, should I wear these shoes or these other shoes? Man, if we had to make decisions about everything and we had to second guess everything, it would be a sad way to live. And we don't want to do that in a testing environment either. The thing is, if you go with your first answer, you have an opportunity to do it better. If you second guess, you lose that opportunity. Here's what I mean. Going with your first answer allows you to refine your instincts. It allows you to go back and look at the right answer for a certain question, even if you got it wrong, and then to recalibrate. Anybody know what calibration means? You might calibrate your tires, you might calibrate some gauges. It means to get back on track. Thank you very much, that's correct. So how do you get back on track? You can only do it if you go with your first instinct. And then, over time, your instinct gets better, right? Because you're adjusting, you're calibrating to get it better and better and better. But if you're constantly second guessing, you lose that chance to recalibrate. Your opportunities are gone because you're constantly thinking that you're wrong. That's no way to live, and that's no way to take a test. Believe in yourself, think that you're right, and calibrate so you get there. The good thing is, you trust yourself more and more, right? And this calibration is kind of like this gauge that we're talking about. It allows you to refine and get better and get stronger. And it's the gift that keeps giving. Your guessing and your first choice is continually getting stronger and better and more accurate. That's the way to go. Let's talk about the next part of our quiz, which is coins. What could that be? What do y'all think that might mean in the context of the GRE? Again, use your cheat sheet page that I gave you. I gave you a couple of words, one word in there. What do y'all think this might mean? It's number 6 on the back of your sheet. It's an analogy. What to what? To stack something? That's a good guess. Stacking, that's a possibility. I like that. It's not that, but that's a very good guess. Ambrosia, I see your mind clicking. I see your thoughts processing. You got something for me?
No.
All right, I'll tell you. This one's hard. This one's really hard. Stairs? I like that. Stairs is good. This is the analogy of time and money.
Time is money.
Time is money, that's right. In fact, some people use that as a real saying.
Yeah.
Time is money. So here I want to illustrate that in the context of taking the GRE test. Time is most definitely like money. How is it like money? Well, as you can see in the first bullet here, you can quote unquote save time on the easy questions. You would spend, just like you spend money, you would spend your time on the medium questions. And this sounds weird, right? Most people you might think would say, well, you should spend your time on the hardest questions out there. That is not true, and that is not what I recommend. I recommend you spend your time on the medium questions, because that's called spending wisely. Spending wisely means I'm going to spend my time on something I can actually get right if I work hard enough at it. Spending unwisely is when you spend your time trying to do a question that is so hard for you that if you had the whole time period, you might not get it right. That's a waste of time. So that's what I want to emphasize. Saving time is very much like picking the apple, the low-hanging fruit, right? You got a tree. Everybody heard of low-hanging fruit? It's basically where you've got a tree and you are able to grab it right off where you're standing. You don't have to climb a ladder. You don't have to do anything. You just reach up and grab it. That is easy stuff, low-hanging fruit. The opposite of that is the bottom illustration. That's the timer that's ticking away. You don't want to waste your time on any one or two or three questions that's going to get the better of you. That is how you waste time. And that is how you, quote unquote, lose in the game of the GRE. You all see how this time and money analogy can work in the GRE context? You all see the parallels? Any questions about anything I've covered so far? You all getting this? Is this good? Is this good information? Okay. And have you all taken any GRE practices or anything like that? Or are you very new to GRE?
Very new.
Very new? Okay, so this is really right up your alley. This is perfect. This is covering just the real basics of what you need to know. So this is great. Let's take a look at our next one. You know how they do on those infomercials where Mr. Skinny comes out and does a program, pays a whole lot of money, and then comes out as Mr. Buff, Mr. Good Looking, Mr. Muscle Bound. What do you think I'm trying to say with these pictures? These admittedly very silly pictures. Ambrosia? Know yourself. I like that. Yes, know yourself. Very good. Know yourself, your weaknesses and your strengths. So important. And obviously I'm talking about in a GRE context, like which sections of the GRE are you good at? For those of you who are kind of new, which are those folks up here, you may not know what you're good at or bad at yet, or what you're strong at or what you're weak at. But as you start to do practice tests or you start to look at questions, you're going to quickly realize, gosh, I really like these questions. I do well. I know how to do them. I feel confident and comfortable. And then other ones you're going to say, I feel very uncomfortable. I don't know what I'm doing and I feel very lost. Help me. That's how you obviously know right away what are strengths and weaknesses in a GRE context, is the kinds of questions you're asked and your feeling, your ability to get those questions right or wrong. The weaknesses, once you've identified what those are, say for example their sentence completion in the verbal. That may mean nothing to you, but I know for some of you like Demarius, that means a lot. You know what that means. Maybe that's your weakness. The thing to watch out for is, just like the last slide, I've got this picture of the ticking time bomb, the clock. That is a time waster. If you're bad at sentence completion, if you recognize that you struggle with sentence completion, then you should know that that is a potential pitfall for you. You've got to be very careful not to fall in that hole and get stuck doing a sentence completion question that you know you had no business spending 10 minutes working on, right? So that's where understanding yourself, know thyself, is going to come into play. On the opposite end, you've got Mr. Good Looking, Mr. Workout. And for him, it's all about, to tie it back in, the low-hanging fruit. Again, I'm tying back into the last slide to give you a second look at this, to help you understand a little bit further. So when you look at your strengths, that's an opportunity. An opportunity to grab that low-hanging fruit, eat it up real good, bang, you're good to go. So you're getting through questions faster. You're spending less time on the easy questions, giving you more time to work on the medium questions, right? There is one more in our little game show game. Something is essential, as it says on my page. What do you think might be essential for the GRE? Read? Yep. Demarius has got an example right in front of him. Practice is essential. You've got to get that book, whatever it might be. You've got to look, not just buy it. Don't just buy it and leave it, sitting on your kitchen table. We know how that is. Sometimes that happens, right? Procrastination. I got a session on that later this semester. Feel free to check it out. wssu.edu/success workshops. But beyond procrastination, if you bought the book, man, you got to open that book. You got to start working on it. Create a game plan, figure out when you're going to do what, schedule it out, and then do what you schedule. This is the fundamentals of being a student, right? This is what you have to do for all your classes. The GRE, preparing for it, is like taking a class where you are the instructor. You've got to design your program. With practice, you can get better at the GRE. But the corollary, the opposite, is also true. If you fail to practice, if you fail to actually get better at something, you won't get better at it. If you don't put in the work, if you don't put in the time to practice, you cannot get better. You'll stay at about the same as you were before. So you decide. Is it important enough to you? Do you want better scores or not? And I've put that question on your sheet. It's kind of obvious that I hope you'll say yes. So check that box right now. Figure out for yourself, what are you committing to? Do you want to get a higher score, or do you not want to get a higher score? So I'll give you a moment to answer. The harder question is the following one, which is really the challenge for today. I don't want to leave you with just information. I want to leave you with a challenge, something that says, now it's your turn. I need to pass the buck, pass the football, pass the ball to you. What are you willing to give up to get there, to do better on the GRE? And this is actually a reflection question I want you to spend about the next 5 minutes thinking about. I've left some space on your page to do that. We all have a very busy life, right? You've got school, you might even have work. Who here has work that they've got to go to as well? Right, some of you have got a work life as well. You got to balance that. You got a social life, right? You got a lot of things going on. You got home life, maybe going home to mama or daddy or whomever, your family life. You got a lot of things to work out. How are you going to make space to study for the GRE? That's a very challenging question. So I'm going to leave you 5 minutes starting now to go ahead and write up what specifically is your plan to allow yourself to do better on the GRE. Go ahead and start now. Okay, so let's talk about it. What did you all have? What did you write down for yourself as to what it's going to take? Any ideas you want to share? You don't have to share everything, maybe just one idea.
I'm going to give up procrastination.
You're going to give up procrastination?
Yeah.
Yes, we just solved procrastination. Boom! Good, yes. Definitely, giving up procrastination is a big one. And again, I would direct you to, there's another session I'm going to do on procrastination in a few weeks. I want to say 2 or 3 weeks. So definitely look to the Success Workshops website that I told you about. What else? What else do you have to do to get better at the GRE? If that's really your goal, what are you going to do to get there?
Actually make a time to study, because I'll say I'll study and then I don't do it, so I actually have to make a time to do it.
So your answer is make time to study instead of thinking you're going to do it but then failing to do it, right? What makes you fail? What causes you to fail to do it?
Procrastination.
Yeah, procrastination, definitely. So what I recommend, and I've done this in a study skills seminar that I've done last semester, is actually box out in your schedule time for specific things. So literally Thursday night, 6 to 6:30 p.m., do test 4, section 1 of my GRE test, textbook. Or, Saturday, 9 a.m. to 9:45 a.m., review test number 4, section 1. And so you actually allocate blocks of time within your schedule to do certain things. That's what I highly, highly advise. It really works well, and it forces you to stick with the plan because you actually made a plan and gosh, now you got to do it. So it's almost like creating an external force that makes you do stuff, even though you're the one who actually is creating that external force. But it just tricks your mind into thinking, oh, yeah, now's the time to do it, so I better do it. Anybody else? Any other ideas?
Train myself to actually take this.
Train yourself to actually take more practice tests?
Or whenever you're taking the real deal GRE, GRE is boring.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, that's great. So definitely trying to do more practice tests is excellent. All right, with that, let's go on to some more specific things. One thing I wanted to talk about, well, really quickly, this is the official guide to the GRE. That's what I would recommend you study off of because they have compiled previous actual test questions. Anything else does not have actual previous test questions. So Demarius is a good example. He's got that book in front of him, and that's what it looks like right here. So that's what I recommend. They do have some other sister publications like the Superpower Pack or the Extra Quantitative Reading and the Verbal Reasoning and Quantitative Reasoning. Those are extra books. Wanted to talk a little bit about memorization because in the verbal section of the test, you're going to find that memorizing new words, vocabulary words, is going to be critical to your success. So I wanted to spend our last few minutes talking about that. Before we do that, we have to talk about memory systems. And memory systems, I've created an acronym called RAVE to talk about it. The R in RAVE is repeat. It's got to be a repeatable thing where you constantly look it over. It's also got to be associated with something that you know or like or love, something that's very, very integral to who you are. The third thing in order to remember something is for it to be visual. And the final thing is, it's best if you exaggerate it. Now let me give you an example of those last two. Say you're trying to learn angel hair pasta. Say you don't know what that is. And you've got a beautiful plate of angel hair pasta. Is that going to help you remember? Because yeah, it's visual. Or will this help you? Right, this guy's going to help you remember it a lot better. Because it's not just visual, it's visually exaggerated. It's ridiculous, it's silly. But because of that, it's much more memorable. And if you put that in your memory banks and link it to angel hair pasta, you're much more likely to remember it. Especially if you put a halo around his head. Then it's really an angel hair pasta. So let's talk about some real vocabulary examples. These are actual GRE words that are possibly going to show up on the test. I've got two of them up here on the screen. One is called eschew, that's how you would say it, eschew, and the other is claustrophobia. Does anybody know what eschew means? Okay, eschew means to avoid. So eschew is to avoid. Now what we have to devise is some way to remember that eschew means to avoid. It's got to be something that's repetitive, that we can see again and again, won't get too bored of. It's associated with something we already know. It's possibly visual and exaggerated. So some of the things you can do to learn vocabulary words is, I really feel like it's important to create something memorable, a memory device. Sounds like, using a sounds like trick, using a silly phrase, using an image that's ridiculous. In this case, I think sounds like could help us a lot. What does eschew sound like?
Or issue.
Issue, yeah. For me, it sounds like achoo, like sneezing. But issue's good too, because you sometimes might want to avoid issues. But I also like to avoid people who have colds, don't you? Right? So eschew sounds like achoo, and when we put it together like that, we create a visual image that links to achoo. So here's what I've got. It's a person who's sneezing all over the place. And man, I really want to avoid people who are sneezing. So I'm going to avoid or eschew people who say achoo. So I create a phrase where the word eschew that I'm trying to remember is also in the sentence that I'm memorizing. So eschew people who say achoo. Both eschew and achoo are in there. Or I could simply remember the visual image. Guy, the nose with all the stuff coming out. Now why did I make it so graphic and disgusting?
So you can remember.
Exactly, right? Just like YouTube videos. What attracts attention, right? Kids, babies, puppies, and gross things. All those are things that attract people to watch those videos. In the same way, because they're very memorable. In the same way, to remember your vocabulary, you need to come up with something fantastic, silly, funny, grotesque, disgusting. Those can help. Now let's talk about claustrophobia. Who knows what claustrophobia means? Anyone give me a definition? Miss Ambrosia?
A person who fears being closed in.
Yes, a person who fears being closed in.
Yeah,
I'm sorry?
that's me.
That's you. So Ambrosia is claustrophobic, so she knows what claustrophobia is all about. Now we got to think of a memory device, a way to remember that claustrophobia means fear of tight places. What do you think? What could...
Trucks on the highway.
I'm sorry?
Trucks on the highway.
Trucks on a highway. Very good. Okay, why trucks on a highway?
Because they're bigger than me.
And that makes you scared.
Yes.
All right, but we have to link the word claustrophobia. How do we get that claustrophobia in there?
There was an episode on SpongeBob.
Cluster, I like that, the word cluster. Go
There
ahead.
was an episode on SpongeBob when they said he was afraid of Santa Claus. That's what claustrophobia means. That's how I remember
Okay,
it.
so there's an episode on SpongeBob that talks about how he's afraid of Santa Claus. Now, how old were you when you, this was not last year, was it?
No, I'm 7, 8.
I'm just playing with you. Right, so you're 7 or 8, you saw a video about SpongeBob SquarePants and how he was scared of Santa Claus, so he was claustrophobic. That's actually what I've got. I have never seen that video of SpongeBob because I'm just a little bit older than you guys. So that's not what I'm used to watching. But yes, it can be fear of small places. And here's what I've come up with. You got Mr. Santa Claus, right? You can see his little hat. What does Santa Claus have to do to give presents? He's got to go through the... Yes, so he's going down the chimney, and what happens? Are chimneys big old things, or are they tight little things? They're tight little things. So him getting through the chimney, Santa Claus fears small places. So I got the chimney, the brick, it's squeezing his face. You know, I can see he's got the hat and the beard or whatever. So that is my picture, my image, my visual, exaggerated image of Santa Claus. That helps me to remember that claustrophobic means fear of small places. If all I do is remember that visual image, I will have remembered the word claustrophobia. So those are some tips on how to get your vocab up, because your vocabulary knowledge is going to come into play on the GRE. And then finally, I would say that once you've gotten some of those either digital or physical cards created, create a system of boxes, and you want to repeat. Remember how we talked about RAVE? Repeat, associate, visualize, exaggerate. We've talked a lot about associating with what you know, like SpongeBob. We've talked a lot about visualize and exaggerate, but the R, repeat, is very important. And here you would put those cards in a today, and once you got it right a few times, you would put it in a every other day or Monday, Wednesday, Friday system. And once you got those right time and time again, then all you have to do is check it once a week. Maybe it's your Saturday box. So as you're putting your cards in, you're putting it in a daily box until you get it right 2 or 3 times in a row. Then you can put it in an every other day. And then after you get that 2 or 3 times in a row correct, you kick it to the weekly, and then maybe even monthly, depending on how long you're going to take the test. So this is a system of boxes that will help you to organize all of those new words that you're going to learn from those wonderful visual images. Any questions about all this stuff? How to create a way to remember things, new vocabulary, how to repeat so that you can remind yourself of what they mean? Is this useful? Does this sound like something you could do if you put some effort into it? I know it's not, snap your fingers, you can do it, but if you put a little effort into it, I think you can come up with some of these images yourself. Any questions? Was this useful to you all? All right, great. Well, that's the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for coming to GRE Test Prep Strategies. I hope to see you at another workshop very soon. Thanks.